welcome to the latest episode of the Audio Brew here at Kronos AV. So today we want to talk about a question that comes up quite a lot here at Kronos AV from customers, and that is about listening fatigue. And we want to basically look at essentially three parts of listening fatigue. First and foremost, exactly what it is, because a lot of people, it's a word that's used in HiFi quite a lot. But in fairness, many customers don't actually know exactly what people are referring to when they say that. The second is we want to talk a little bit about what's the effect of it and what is basically happening when you're having that listening fatigue. And the third thing is just about how we fix it or how we overcome the issue in the system. So, as we said before, we want to talk about what is listening fatigue. And essentially, what listening fatigue is, it's sometimes even something that we don't realize is an issue. And the idea essentially is it's just when you're listening to your system, you get that sense of tiredness. Obviously, extreme cases, you may even get a slight headache, or just a feeling that something doesn't sound quite right. And ultimately, it's a fatigue because it's not allowing you to sit back and enjoy your system in a relaxed way, because there's something in the system that is obviously irritating or doesn't sound quite as it should. And that basically makes the system sound tiresome to enjoy, which is completely wrong and absolutely not what we all want to do with our systems. So when people do speak of that fatigue factor, that is more about the system's just not as enjoyable and relaxing as it should be to listen to. And essentially, in the most literally simplistic of terms, the sort of science behind that is that we all generally have songs or music that we know very, very well. And when we listen to a system that's not quite right, that music doesn't come across correctly. So our brains essentially have one version of that song, and then we hear this sort of essentially new version, and our brains are essentially can't process it. It's feeling something's wrong, it gets irritated, and therefore you feel that sort of tired effect, that fatigue, and that sense of irritation. And that is effectively the sort of science behind it, because we all know what a vocalist should sound like. We all know what the human voice should sound like. We all know what a violin should sound like, a guitar, a trumpet. We've heard them all generally in real life. And what a hi-fi system should be doing is just bringing that out for you. But it shouldn't really be emphasizing it or redeveloping it, in any way. It should be very, very natural, because that's what musicality is all about. And this is actually something we were able to learn even more about when we did a lot of work with Boy Vance, because obviously as an Emmy award winning singer-songwriter, he has so much experience in this particular field, and he was sort of breaking down for us exactly what goes in when they're recording songs and different things. And he again wants that naturalism to come through in his music, and therefore he doesn't like any of this enhancements or when maybe guitars are pushed forward in the music, when in real life it's not what happens. And it's exactly the same thing, because again that enjoyment doesn't come through. And that's effectively what we want to try and avoid in hi-fi. But so often it can be the case where that is exactly what is happening. And as I said before, sometimes we're not even aware of it. But in reality, you should be able to sit down with a hi-fi system and listen for 5 hours effortlessly. It shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to listen really for as long as you want if the system's correct. But so often we get guys maybe saying, "Oh yeah, I can listen for an hour, and yeah, it's nice." But there's something not right there then, because you should be able to do more than that. You shouldn't be getting fed up. You should almost be sort of dragged away from the system almost. Um, and again, a bit like the system, time should almost disappear slightly. It shouldn't be a case of you're timing how long you can listen to your system for, going, well, I'll only listen for about an hour, that'll be enough. You should just be sitting back, relaxing and enjoying it. 2 hours, 3 hours pass. That's the idea. Because when we go to a concert, we're not looking at our watches and saying, I wonder how long this is going to be, and things of that nature. So hi-fi should be no different. And it was exactly the same, actually. I recently attended a concert and there was this stunning live violinist, did this amazing solo piece. And again, there was no concern for me about how long that piece. It was a long, long piece, but I wasn't worried about the length. I wasn't worried about what was happening because it was amazing, and because obviously it was live and it was in a church. So it was this beautiful, beautiful church that had incredible acoustics and it was brilliantly well presented. The music was so pure and natural, and there was no over amplification. There was nothing there that was trying to tweak it. It was just literally this fantastic musician with a violin, and I was able to listen to it effortlessly. And I could have listened 2, 3 times as long, and that's exactly what your hi-fi system should be doing. So again, moving on obviously to the third point, then what do we do about this? What do we do if we are noticing that our system is becoming tiresome, or we're just not getting that full enjoyment factor? And 9 times out of 10, people will always point to the speaker, which is, I guess you could say, fair enough, because that is obviously what is producing the physical sound. But while it can be the speaker, and a speaker can often be the product at fault, it can be anything really in the system, all from the mains to the source to the amplification to the cables. It could be any aspect of the system, because of course your speaker is only producing essentially what has been given. So if there is something in the system that's not correct, that is corrupting the sound, essentially the speaker is going to produce that and it can't really do anything about that. So it could be a number of things that are at fault. It could be one tiny thing like a specific cable. Because, for example, if you put a cable in your system that is quite bright, for example, it may well throw a lot of detail at you, but in actual fact, that's adding fatigue to the system, because again, your brain, we can get overwhelmed by the excitement of, wow, look at the detail. I can hear them breathing, I can hear the guitar strings, I can hear the drums, I can hear this, I can hear that. But ultimately, in the end of the day, our brain quickly realizes it's not real, it's not right, it's not natural sounding, and therefore fatigue kicks in. And that's the sort of trap you need to be careful of, because a system needs to have that synergy. So again, it could be something as simple as one cable is a little bit too bright, and that letting fatigue then creep into the system. And it's a small aspect of the system, but it's something that can literally destroy a system. So, but as I say, it's a very easy fix, because we simply can take that cable away, find a cable that has a better synergy with the rest of the system, something that's going to work better, and then you're back to enjoying your system the way you should be. So it's quite hard often for a customer to maybe find the fault themselves, and that's just purely because it's hard, obviously, for you guys to always be able to hear everything, and even having the training, let's say, likes of ourselves would have as a retailer. So normally 9 times out of 10, if you are saying you're having an issue or you feel you're fatiguing your system, if you send us a list of your system, or if you're in store, of course, let us know what you have. We can generally pinpoint what we think will be the problem. It's purely not that we can hear better or anything like that. It's just, again, we have, because obviously we work in the industry, we have that experience behind us. We've heard most products on the market, and obviously, again, we have the training behind us. So we're able to pinpoint potentially, we think this is what's probably causing that issue. You can then swap it out, try it. You will know your system better than anybody, so you will hear immediately if you find it better or you find it worse. But it is normally a really simple fix. And it's not always necessarily, people kind of worry going, oh, this is going to be essentially major surgery in my system. But it's not necessarily. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to have to change amps and speakers and it's going to be a whole expense. But often it can be something like an interconnect cable, a speaker cable, just something that is maybe, as I say, a little bit bright, or, maybe just it doesn't have the bass or the mid in it, to control those tops, things like that. And that can be quite inexpensive, and it can also be quite a quick fix. And again, you're not really rearranging your furniture or your room or anything like that. You're just swapping cable out. Sometimes it does take a little bit more than that. Sometimes it is maybe a speaker is a bad match to an amp, or vice versa. Maybe the source isn't right. Or maybe it could be a case of maybe adding something into the system like a network switch, a network filter, um, even mains products, things like that, that are actually just enhancing it or just controlling maybe that source slightly better. But there's hundreds of ways and hundreds of means to do it. There's isolation, there is room correction. There's lots and lots of things, and it will be down to each individual system. So there's no sort of one pill fixes everything kind of situation. It is very, very individual, and that's why we always welcome you guys. Please do feel free to get in touch, because if you're saying to us, guys, like, I'm listening to my system, but after about an hour, I'm just sort of getting fed up and tired. I don't know what's wrong. I like the sound, but there's something missing, or there's something not right. That's absolutely fine. You don't necessarily need to be able to explain to us in great detail exactly what's wrong. You can simply come to us and say, something's just not right, guys. I don't know what it is, but something's not right. And if you list your system out for us, we can generally go through it, find what we think will probably be where the issue lies, let you try some things, let you hear some things, and we'll figure it out, and again, it doesn't hurt to ask, if, as I say in the past, sometimes we have maybe said, yeah, look, you will have to change the speakers, I think. That's where the fault lies. Maybe at the time it's not affordable, but it's something then you can sit on and go, okay, we need to get the speakers changed, save up a little bit, or you can maybe do finance. There's lots of ways, obviously, around it, but the key thing is when you invest in a hi-fi system, you want it to be the absolute best it can be for your given budget, and you want to enjoy it. That's the whole point. And you want to be able to go home and think, I can sit here for 6 hours, 1 hour, 3 hours, it doesn't matter, and just sit back and enjoy your system. That's the whole point of why we do this. We all love music, but we all want it to be natural. And as I always say, I think most of us have that goal of wanting the artist in the room with us. That's essentially the sound we want to try and reproduce. But to do that, the sound has to be natural. I know, if I had one of my favorite artists in the room with me, I would sit for as many hours as they're willing to sing. So, your system shouldn't be any different than that. So if you're listening to the recordings of those artists, it should be exactly the same thing. So that's effectively what listening fatigue is. It is that sense of just not enjoying it, of feeling a bit tired, or almost feeling like listening to your system is work, which is totally, totally wrong. And if you are feeling that in any way, there is something fundamentally wrong in the system. But as I say, it could be something very, very minor and easy to fix. It could be something more serious, a bigger component that needs moved. But please do feel free to get in touch. We're always happy to help. As I say, you don't need to go into massive technical detail. You can simply come to us and say, guys, something in this system just isn't working for me. Can you help? And more than happy to, no obligation. Happy to chat, take as long as you need to figure out what's going on, and to get your system sounding the way it is. This is part of the process for us here at Kronos, is making sure the system is individually made for each customer. And that's one of the reasons we've won so many awards, is that each customer gets a very specialized service to make sure the system works for them. Whether the system works for us is essentially irrelevant. It has to work for you as a customer. That's what's important. And making sure there's no listening fatigue is essentially one of the number one priorities here, regardless of the budget, regardless of the system. It needs to be right for you, and you need to be able to enjoy it for as long as you want to, not as long as the system wants you to. So I hope this wee bit of information has been helpful. Maybe it gives you a little bit of food for thought. And as I said, please feel free to always get in touch. We're always happy to chat and go through things, and anything we can do to help, we're always here to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon in the next episode.